In. Welcome everybody. This is webinar number one. It sort of feels from an M&L perspective that we're actually launching the countdown today to the municipal elections coming up in September. So really grateful to have you here. Hope everybody is all right with the fact that we will be taping this event, and that content will be archived tape mounted as well on the elections page on the M&L website for others to view later on. So if you have any concerns, just keep that in mind when it comes to the Q&A, and yeah, we will make sure that nobody that wants to be on screen is on screen in those instances. So I imagine by now you have all seen the circular. We are looking at circumstances here, of course, in the context of COVID, where having a COVID safe and accessible election is something that that is very much front of mind. So Municipal and Provincial Affairs has basically come down on the side of encouraging everybody to consider, at the very least, adopting the vote by mail option. And of course, the reason for that is that, you know, in the event that we find ourselves back in a lockdown circumstance, the level 5 and level 4 circumstances will certainly mean that the status quo of municipal elections with in-person voting would not be able to proceed on that basis. So really, as you can see here, the only option that really gives us the coverage that we need, you know, in any one of the scenarios that we might find ourselves in September, is the vote by mail option. And we are 5 months out, so we've got some time to put this stuff in place. M&L and the professional municipal administrators are working together in order to ensure that we've got a well-defined countdown and series of supports and timely information for you. This is just the first of a number of these sessions that we'll be having. The vote by mail decision is something that we hope you'll be able to make at some point through the month of May, at the very latest in early June, and that should allow plenty of time for dealing with things like the vote by mail regulations and any of the other special arrangements that you may need to make. We will be providing additional information regarding your voters list. That's something that now, whether you decide to go vote by mail or not, everybody has to have a voters list. So there's going to be a lot of information that we will be providing that will serve everyone. And we will also be working to make sure that this is the most accessible election ever that we've had in the municipal sector. So we've got a team of community advisors that are going to be working with us, COD and L included, of course, in order to ensure that you have the information you need in order to sort of give yourself a little bit of an audit and make sure that you're designing accessibility into your election plans. So here's the news to come. A number of events coming in the next few weeks, but today is the big question that many people have. You know, exactly what is vote by mail? We only have one municipality in this province that really has an extensive experience of vote by mail, and of course that's the city of St. John's. So it's obviously our largest municipality by far, but this is going to be a session where we're going to hear about how St. John's has been doing it and troubleshooting the circumstances for the largest electorate in this province municipally. And then we're going to have some time to sort of reflect on what it is we can do, you know, in smaller communities to right size the experience, because obviously not everybody needs all of the bells and whistles of the system that the city of St. John's has in place. So without further ado, I'm going to toss this over now to our colleagues from the city. We have Elaine Henley, the city clerk, and we also have Karen Chafe, who is the supervisor in the office of the city clerk, but is the anointed one she will soon be taking over as city clerk. So so you could say we've got two really heavy hitters here to talk us through this today. Anyways, welcome Karen and Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to talk to you today about the vote by mail, which the city has been using since 2001. We've had great success with it. The majority of those who vote use vote by mail. There's about, I would say, around 10% that opt to vote the traditional way at the satellite drop-off centers, traditionally known as polling stations. And we'll just walk you through the process now, how the city conducts its vote by mail election. So we'll talk about what it is, a brief history, the governing legislation, the vote by mail process, including the voters list, which is the permanent list of electors, which we obtain from Elections Newfoundland and Labrador. We have the components of the kit itself and the election period, and then the pros and cons and things that you may want to consider as a municipality within Newfoundland. So the vote by mail, it's exactly as it states. It is a method of voting that means voting right from your mailbox, as the little graphic demonstrates. So it is permitted under the Municipal Elections Act. And as I indicated earlier, we've been using it since 2001. In 2001, we still had the manual counting, some of the traditional practices. In 2005, we adopted very different processes that are all electronic and much more technical election. So it involves distributing the mail kits, which we will show you in a little bit, by mail. We contract with Canada Post to do that. The kits go to all the registered voters on the St. John's voters list, and the ballots are returned by mail. We also have a drop box that we place in front of City Hall that people can drop their completed kits into, or they can come in person on the date of the election. This is a brief history of our election since 2001. I note that the 2001 full election is not there. So as you can see, typically in our elections, by-elections are about 40% of the electorate vote. And the full election is about 52 to 53%. And it's interesting to note as well that the percentages are a little skewed because it depends on the number of people we capture on the voters list. So if our voters list is fully cleansed and we're not able to capture everybody, the percentage will appear to be high because it's based on the number of people who are on the voters list. So
there was some amalgamations, I think, that occurred. Oh, but that was probably in the early 90s that kind of skewed the voters list somewhat. But yes.
I think it was prior to the vote by mail though.
Yeah.
So the governing legislation, we, like the other municipalities across Newfoundland and Labrador, are governed by the Municipal Elections Act. The City of St. John's has its own act, obviously, and we need to adhere to that as well. And the St. John's Municipal Election Vote by Mail bylaw is a bylaw that we passed back in 2001 and has subsequently been updated as our practices change. So that's a bylaw that governs how we conduct our vote by mail election. Voters list is actually the permanent list of electors. It's better known as that. And when we receive that, so we contract with Elections Newfoundland and Labrador, we obtain the permanent list of electors from them. And then our LIS system, they take that and manipulate it to reflect the actual wards and the areas within each of the 5 wards. And then we spend from the month of May right up to the election period cleansing that list. The ability to cleanse is challenging. I think the voters list is the biggest challenge for the City of St. John's. And we do have different methodologies we use to do that. We do contract with Vital Stats, and we reconcile with our own sales data. And then,
I guess we actually have information sharing agreements with Vital Statistics and Elections NL as opposed to contracts.
and then we have the online voter registration available to the general public. And that is on our website. So people can register online by going into the website and doing so. Or they can call the city 311 or the election office. So there are multiple ways of doing that, or they can come in person if they choose. So we have multiple ways of people being able to self-register. Okay.
And I'd like to add, the voters list is particularly important for the city of St. John's because we mass mail the voting kits to everybody on the list. So we want to make sure that the list is as updated as it can be.
So in other words, a lot of municipalities are going to be offering people the option to vote by mail, whereas we use exclusively vote by mail. So whomever is on that voters list gets a kit automatically, whether they want one or not. They may choose not to use it, but they are provided with one. Okay, Kathleen. So the vote by mail kit. These are the kits that are delivered to everyone on the voters list. They include the instructions, the voter declaration form stating that they are who they claim to be, the ballot itself, the secrecy envelope, and the return envelope. Now, if you want it to show the video, it demonstrates how the kit is completed.
And this is a video from the 2017 general election.
So perhaps while we're waiting for Brad to get that up and running for us, I'll just few housekeeping rules that we didn't really address at the outset. Obviously, we appreciate it if you would keep your microphone off if you are watching and while the presentation is ongoing. But we will have a Q&A after this, and folks will be able to unmute and speak directly then.
Open it carefully. Inside you will find 2 pieces of paper and 2 envelopes. One of the envelopes is yellow and the other is white, and one of the pieces of paper is your official ballot. The other is voter instructions along with a voter declaration. Begin by reading the voter instructions carefully to ensure that your ballot is not spoiled. Select your candidates. To vote, completely fill in the oval next to your choices. You may vote for 1 mayoral candidate, 1 deputy mayor candidate, up to 4 councillors at large, and 1 ward candidate. To ensure your vote counts, use a pen or marker with blue or black ink and completely fill in the oval. Don't use an X or don't use a pencil. And it's better not to write anything else in on the ballot. Place your completed ballot inside the white ballot secrecy envelope and seal it. Then place the white secrecy envelope inside the yellow return envelope. But before you seal up the yellow envelope, read and sign the declaration form. The declaration form says that you are a Canadian citizen, 18 years of age or older, eligible to vote in the election, and declares that you have not already voted for anybody in this election. Place your voter declaration form inside the yellow envelope so that the City of St. John's address appears in the envelope window. Seal your yellow envelope and put it in the mail. Remember that it can be mailed before Friday, September 22nd. After that date, you will need to drop off your ballot. There are a number of ways you can do that. There's a drop-off box located outside the main entrance of City Hall at 10 New Gower Street. You can drop your voter mail kit there up until and including Election Day. You can also bring it to any of the satellite drop-off centers listed here on Election Day. If you require further assistance with your ballot, please contact us. Our phone number is 311 or 754-CITY.
Okay, I just need to bring back up our presentation. There we go.
Perfect. So I think that was pretty self-explanatory. Yeah.
And you'll note that we've got a bit.ly link there for everybody to scribble down if you want to be able to go back and visit that one again, especially if you're trying to explain it to somebody else. Oops.
And these are just each page of the contents of the kit. So you can look at that a little further. And the instructions on this, we have reviewed this, revamped this repeatedly with multiple staff looking at it to ensure the simplicity of the instruction and the clarity of the instruction. And we still have those that are rejected because they don't complete it as required. But yeah, the clarity of that's very important. Simple language, clear direction.
One thing I'd like to add is sometimes we get a lot of criticism for voter fraud. And we like to put this little note up in, I don't know if you can read it on your screens on the right-hand side, important information. You know, it's against the law to use more than one ballot or vote under another's name. And we kind of like to use it as a little threat to say, look, if you want to go ahead and do this, you could get caught and you could get fined. Is it worth it, kind of thing. So we like to kind of put that in there to.
Well, it's legislation, so we try to reinforce the legislation that it is illegal to do that. We have not, while we hear a lot of talk about fraud, we have not actually experienced a lot of fraud. We've had minimal people who claim when they try to vote that they haven't, and yet they're reflected as voting.
Yeah, one thing about the vote by mail, if we come across instances of fraud, like you say, they're very rare. It's easily trackable. So if I moved into Elaine Henley's house and received her vote by mail kit in the mail, and I thought that I would use her vote by mail kit to vote on her behalf for myself. She goes to vote at a different location. She realizes the vote has already taken place. She can then opt to do an oath or affirmation of voter fraud, and that causes us to track the vote. So it's very trackable. The ballot itself is not, but the voter declaration form is.
So that speaks to the importance of the voter declaration form. When we get the completed kit back from the voter, we separate the voter declaration form from the secrecy envelope. And that voter declaration form is scanned, they're all barcoded, and they're specific to each individual voter. We now know that Karen Chafe has voted. Then the ballot and the voter declaration form are separated, never to be connected again. So that maintains the integrity and the secrecy of your vote. So this is the ballot, and sorry about that. Our ballots are they're all coded because we actually scan all of our ballots. We do not manually count. So they're all processed through a scanner. This is so this is just a sample of our ballot. The secrecy and the return envelope, obviously using different colors makes it very easy for the electorate to distinguish between the two. One is specifically marked as the secrecy envelope and the other is bright yellow. And that's the return envelope. And those two are separated as I indicated. And they're, the voter declaration form is scanned to note that that individual voter has voted. And then the ballot is put in a ballot box and put in a secure room that there is only one key, and the city clerk or the acting officer has the key to the room. We're the only one allowed access to that room.
Elaine, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about the candidates portal at this time or not. The candidates portal, when candidates are nominated, we give them access to the software, instead of giving them a physical voters list. So they can go in and see who has or has not voted. As we get returns come in and we scan the voter off the list, they can see that that voter has voted. So I guess they can determine their campaign strategies based on that information.
And yes, Karen's right. And the other thing is important to note that their access does not allow them full access to the personal information, because we're acutely aware of a type of legislation and not allowing them to have the date of birth, for example. But they are permitted access to the voters list, and Karen's right. So then they can adjust their campaigns accordingly.
And they of course have to sign oaths of secrecy that they don't disclose that information we've given them to anyone else.
So the election period, this is a very important period in our world. We know the election day in our world is just, it loses its relevancy, because where we have a vote by mail election, this period is crucial to ensuring that fundamentally we're doing everything we can to allow people to vote. So, and we encourage people to vote by mail. That is the methodology we use, and that's what we encourage them to do. So we contract with Canada Post, and the vote by mail kits are inducted into Canada Post and arrive on the first Monday or Tuesday of the election period, giving people approximately 2 weeks to complete and return their envelopes, their ballots. Election workers, we hire workers who process the vote by mail returns and the online registrations. And then the election day, we have what are called satellite drop-off centers, traditionally known as polling stations. And they're open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can do two things at those. You can drop off a completed kit, or you can receive your ballot. And you can receive your ballot, fill out your ballot, and put it in the ballot boxes provided. We made some changes. We only had one satellite drop-off per ward since 2001. In 2020, our by-elections, the first time we had 2 in a ward. So the 2 to 3 per ward reflect what we're likely to do in the upcoming election. There's likely to be 3 only in Ward 5, because of the Ward 5 is Shea Heights, Kilbride, Southland, so it's very geographically it's quite
massive,
large.
As you may have noticed on the previous slide where the mapping was.
Yeah,
it's the biggest ward.
Yeah. Geographically, all our wards are divided into the number of people within an area, so they're all about 12 to 15,000 people, but geographically it's spread out. Okay. So these costs, I think it's important to know that the costs here were for a by-election. So these costs do not reflect the cost of a full election. Our full election costs about $350,000. And like the data fix cost there, it was only because it was a 1 ward election, but normally it would be $245,000 for 70,000 kits. So the other at $245,000, that's expensive.
And they may give you a better price on a higher number of kits. The economies of scale they might give you a break on that number.
Yeah, because typically I think if we were to put up the cost for a full election in 2017, you would see the cost for data fix was at about 73,000, I think. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
And Canada Post, again, the costs here do not reflect the cost of a full election, because we only had 13,000 mail kits where we would normally have 70,000. And again, the business reply, these costs do not reflect the cost of a full election. They're very, very low. One of the reasons they're so low as well is that because of the economic times, we decided to manually count, which we haven't done since 2005. The reason we made that decision was to reduce costs, and because it was a ward election. So manually counting was quite doable. In our election this year, we are contemplating, we are going to contract with a scanner provider, ballot scanner provider. And we will go back to that. That adds an additional cost of about between $55,000 and $60,000.
And smaller municipalities may not even bother with that consideration because it's easier to count smaller numbers.
They actually do not, they would not incur the cost. It's important to note that you can run a vote by mail election at a very minimal cost. You do not need to do some of the things that we've done. Just smaller community, for example, you can have drop boxes within the community so that you don't even have to incur the cost of the return mail if that's something you want to look at to reduce your costs. You could actually manually count, which will reduce your costs as well. It's for us, we did choose to manually count where we did have a smaller number of electorates. And you know, the costs are substantially lower. The voters list, I guess if you're in a small community, you could probably handle your voters list manually or very differently than the way we handle it. Obviously, we're dealing with large numbers, so our processes reflect that. So the pros, and there are a couple of things noted there. I think the pros are far greater than what's noted there. I mean, it is about accessibility and inclusivity and all of those things, which allow people to vote from the privacy of their home. People who have, you know, mobility issues or transportation issues or any of those issues, they receive the kit in their own home. So there's that convenience. And of course, COVID safe option is obvious. With COVID now, people
Stay the blazes home as
yeah
said that.
yeah so there reduces the likelihood of community spread and all those things, even though I'm recognizing that we can do, you know, if you're having the traditional polling station, you could do the distancing and stuff, but obviously the exposure is greater. And the cons particularly for the city is the cost. However, our costs prior to vote by mail were equally as expensive. So we just had to hire a lot more people. And paper, you know, we want to be environmentally conscious. So there's more paper associated with the vote by mail process.
Yes, back in the old days of having to enumerate the voters list and knock on people's doors, I mean, that's no longer available or advisable to do anymore.
That's not a viable option for a number of reasons, particularly in COVID. So, you know, you're trying to avoid that contact with people. And people are, I mean, there's privacy issues, there's access issues for the city of St. John's, particularly. Most of the apartment buildings or condominiums are locked down, so people are not able to access them, rightfully so. So that poses a problem if you're trying to do the traditional enumeration. So the things to consider. Vote by mail must be customized to the different needs of each municipality. And that's something we want to stress. Like for us, while we're speaking to the City of St. John's processes, we do think that this can be adjusted to the municipality based on its size and so on. So we contract out our voters list administration. We contract out our vote by mail kit development and distribution. We have automated tabulation. So we use a lot of automated processes, which increase our costs, which probably would not be necessary in the smaller municipalities. And again, the municipality must weigh the cost with the benefit. Yep.
One thing that puts our mind at ease with having it contracted out to professional contractors who know what they're doing and have vast experience helping other municipalities across the continent, we know we're getting a good product, and that eases our mind somewhat. But I mean, you might think we have the Cadillac version of vote by mail here, which we may, but as Elaine said, it may not be everybody's.
It may not be necessary for everyone. I think, you know, the numbers and the number of electorates dictate that. So for us, we definitely do have a Cadillac, and we've worked on it tremendously over the years to improve it. We've changed processes, we've improved processes. There was a time when we posted our own voters list, and our IT developed it, but it had limitations. You know, we're continually looking at our practices and improving upon them. So, but again, recognizing that we have 70,000 people.
Not everybody needs a Cadillac, but if you have a good, dependable Volkswagen, that might do you.
Yes. So,
questions?
Ready.
Perfect.
Here, I am going to just pop into the chat and take a quick look. So, Nancy Healy, I don't know, Nancy, would you like to unmute and maybe ask your question directly?
Sure. So what I wanted to know is how long before an election can someone update their their voter registration? So what's the cutoff date before? How many weeks before an election can people register to vote?
They can register right up until just before 8 p.m. on election day, technically.
Okay.
You know, if they want to use vote by mail, there are certainly deadlines, and they would. I think the deadline would be typically a Thursday before election day itself for us to be able to mail out a vote by mail kit to you. It would be too late for you to mail it back, but you can drop it off before election day. So you can register at any time, but just be aware of the deadlines that would dictate how you drop it off or mail it.
I think it's important to note as well, Nancy, that what we do, so we do a mass mail out of kits, but we also receive from the company we contract with a bunch of blanket kits. So as people register during the election period, we then send them kits. And on our website, we work with Canada Post to determine what are the days that will ensure that people are able to return it by mail, what are the days that people will have to bring it into the satellite drop-off centers. And that's right, we provide kits from City Hall right up to election day, as Karen indicated. On election day, you cannot get a kit at City Hall. You have to go to the satellite drop-off center.
Did you say they're blank ones?
Well, no, well, I shouldn't say blank. The ballots are not blank.
No, I know. But
Yeah, sorry. So there's ballots for each of the wards, right?
Right.
But like if someone calls in and they're not on the kit and we register, sorry, they're not on the list and we register them, then we send them a kit. We develop the voter declaration form based on Nancy Healy, an individual voter, that goes in the mail. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll just add there that according to the Municipal Elections Act, you are supposed to have a version of your voters list complete a month before voting day. So I guess this is one of those areas where it depends on the particular process and approach that you wind up with. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Elaine.
We usually give people, once they're nominated, their nomination has been approved, we give them a username and a password to access the voter view candidates portal. So instead of giving candidates a hard copy of the voters list, we actually give them access to the web-based voter view. And as you can imagine, as our vote by mail kits start circulating throughout the community, people see, oh, I haven't received mine, what's going on? They can call us and we can continue to register them within that 2-week period. And we do everything possible to make sure people are registered and right up until election day itself. Yeah. So the voters list, as you can imagine, is always changing, even though we have a cutoff date that we provide to DataFix or whoever the contractor is to generate the mass mailing of the vote by mail kits that we do. There's still going to be a lot of changes on a daily basis. People telling us you sent it to the wrong address, use this address, or I'm not registered at all, or can you delete this person in this household from this list? All kinds of activity is happening during that election period. I would say we probably get, maybe 85 to 90% of the vote by mail kits that are delivered are correct. But, as you can imagine, there are a lot that come back to us that need to be revised.
It's difficult for us to actually identify the percentages. I think you're pretty close. But I think it's difficult because we often don't know, like people destroy the kits or throw them out or whatever. But I think that you made a good point, Karen, when you said that once they hit the mail and once it's advertised and people are acutely aware, oh, it's an election, then they're calling us, say, I didn't register, I didn't get my kit. So there is a lot of activity during that 2-week period, and it's the reason we have multiple election staff working for us.
The voters list
deal
is
with
a
that.
totally fluid document. It changes daily, week, hourly, minute by minute.
It's our
During the
biggest
election
challenge.
period,
It's our
yeah.
biggest challenge.
So we have a question from Rob Beaupertuis. Rob, do you want to unmute and ask your question directly, or?
Guess not.
Okay,
Most
well,
popular sentence. of
yeah,
2021,
Rob
you're
was-
on mute.
Yeah, that's true.
okay. Well, Rob had asked what he was wanting to review again the cost of the ballot itself. So if we were setting aside data fix, if we were setting aside, Canada Post, the actual sort of core cost of the ballot kit.
So.
Well, as per the previous slide, it's $2.45. I guess when you involve the paper and the printing and the establishment of the ballot, once the names are on it, it costs $2.45, not including Canada Post. It could be done internally, I suppose, but it's a big job, and I don't think anyone locally here, my understanding from Canada Post, is able to conduct that work for such a large job as 70,000 people.
I think it's important to note that while we've historically contracted with a company called DataFix, who they charge us per kit for the printing, but they also provide us with the list management. So they host the voters list.
Good point, yes.
And so, that reflects the cost. I do think if you're a smaller municipality and you choose to use a vote by mail kit, I think you can print them internally. I think you can use your own printers. You don't need all the sophisticated bells and whistles that we use. You don't need the scanning, the barcoding. You don't need any of those things. So you could actually just print your ballot and your voter declaration form internally. So I think you can really keep your costs well under control.
I'm going to jump just while we're talking about the actual production of the ballot kits. Chris Torville had a related question regarding the printing of them. So Chris, do you want to unmute and speak to that directly?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All good.
Okay. You sort of answered the question partially. Like for smaller municipalities, are we able to contract to local printing companies to do our kits for us, or would we have to rely on specific companies to do this for us?
Absolutely. That's the answer, short answer to the question. You can contract with whatever companies you wish to. We use DataFix or other. We're in the process now of hearing back from an RFP to get this work contracted for us. But locally, you can use whatever methods you wish. I don't know, Elaine, if you wanted to put in there, as long as it's all, verified by the voters list. Certainly, you can use.
You can, for sure, you can contract out. You could, depending on the size of your municipality, you could even just have an Excel and just do like a, what are those things called? Where you have like that, they insert the name and stuff. I forget what they're called now. We haven't done one of those in years, but, basically you can print it internally. So you can print your ballots and print your voter declaration form and send them to all your electorate, or you can contract with a local printing company for sure. Yeah. There's times when we've contemplated, looking at various methods, but for us, this works. And one of the most favorable things, or one of the biggest benefits, is the fact that this company also hosts our voters list, and the capabilities of the system are quite sophisticated. So it works for us.
Thank you.
We have a question from Kathy Bolger regarding proxy votes. Kathy, are you able to unmute? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. If you do unmute Kathy, perhaps you can speak to it. But her question was, what about proxy votes?
Well, during,
We're not permitted.
we're not permitted, because we have a vote by mail bylaw, and people have the opportunity to vote 2 weeks prior to the actual election day. So a proxy is not permitted
Right.
under our bylaw.
Yeah, so basically the reason we don't allow, as the reasons Karen stated, is there's no need to. Because a proxy vote would allow someone the opportunity to vote because they're not going to be available. They have 2 weeks to vote in our process.
And Nicola Parker, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, my question is, when do you actually count the mail-in votes?
On election day itself, we do not count the ballots. We store them in a secure locked room with only one key that I usually have access to. No one else but me as the elections coordinator would have access to that room. At the end of every day, when our election workers scan the returns, the secrecy ballots get put into ballot boxes and marked. They get locked into a room. And on election day, we take out all those boxes that we've received and bring them all out into a big counting room where we start to open the envelopes and start counting on election day itself.
Scanning.
You're scanning, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we count, no, we're still counting them. So we have election workers who, like the traditional voting where they're manually counting. We just simply open the envelope, take the ballots, spread them out, put them in piles, and they're all scanned into a scanner. And that way there's an audit as well. It's a very sophisticated process.
Now, if you're not using a scanner, you can start counting them manually, I guess, on election day, starting at 8 a.m. in the morning. And it's just counting them throughout the day.
Yeah,
And you're not, you do not count any of your votes until election day itself.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you just going back to something you said, you have quite a sophisticated system. I'm just trying to think of how it would translate into like a community like ours of, less than 500 people. So
You wouldn't need
Oh,
the
yeah,
scanning,
you
you would
wouldn't
just
need the-
manually.
well, we couldn't afford that. So
No, you wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't use it in our last election because we only had, less than
Yeah.
14,000. So just to put it in perspective, we opted to manually count.
We had 4 counters divided into 2 groups for, I think we received something like 5,000 returns that day that had to be counted. And we had 2 groups of 2 people. One would read, the other one would mark. And they would watch each other and kind of, it was a self-correcting process. And throughout it, we easily counted that many ballots by the end of the day. 8 p.m. we knew who had won the election by 8 p.m.
The only thing it's important to note is the importance that Karen said of ensuring you have a process that of the some kind of process in place so that you minimize the risk of manually counting. Because despite our best efforts, we had to do recount on some of them because the numbers were off, and we had a lot of processes in place to mitigate that. So it's important.
And I mean, I can share that information with you, the process we use for manual accounting. You may already have your own processes, but I mean, we're happy to share what worked for us.
I think that would be useful because everything we do here is manual. So now we're people oriented too. So, then we're getting to a manpower situation. So yeah, it would be useful to know how manually it works. Yeah.
Certainly, we can share that information.
Actually, that would be great. Perhaps Karen, we could get it and
Yeah.
share it through the webpage. As
Sure,
well. So
certainly.
we
I'll
will
do
make a
that.
note of that. Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. So next question, Daphne Coles, are you available to unmute?
Hi, I was just wondering, are the ballots sent out by regular mail or registered mail? Would you ensure that all residents are receiving their ballots?
Sorry, Daphne?
Are they sent by registered or regular mail?
Regular.
Yes.
Regular mail, and we have, we work very closely with Canada Post, and they keep their finger on the pulse. The three of us, the three parties work together, the City of St. John's, Canada Post, and our contractor, Datafix. Datafix are constantly in contact with our representative at Canada Post, say, we've got the kits ready to go, we're gonna induct them into the Canada Post system. Our local person here at Canada Post says, okay, we've got all the kits, the 70,000 kits or whatever, we're ready to, they're gonna be dropped in the streets on Monday, ready to go. So we've got pretty good communication with those two as a city. And we know when, we have pretty good timelines, knowing when the mail is gonna be circulated.
Daphne, one thing to note is for the vote by mail kits, we have a different PO. So that distinguishes them from our regular mail. So we set up a different PO.
Right.
And like our PO for the City of St. John's Mail is 908, but we set up one specifically in an election year during the election period. So they all come in separately. And they are brought to us. Yeah, there's really great communication, but it's important to know we have a separate PO, which we would need because of the volume.
And it's important for each municipality, if you're going to use Canada Post, to contact Canada Post and set up that account and make sure the communication lines are open. And once they know, they have a heads up, they'll set you up with a contract themselves, and they know what to be aware of. You know, the town of Conception Bay South, okay, we're going to be ready for a mass amount of vote by mail kits coming down the pipe, and they'll watch that and keep their eye on it. Dwayne Mills, is it Dwayne Mills?
Dwayne Mills,
He's the guy we deal with at Canada Post.
Some of the smaller ones, you may not even need a contract with Canada Post. You know, like I don't know that would necessitate those small numbers.
Even your local postal outlet. It might be a good idea to approach someone there just to make sure, and then they can refer you or to the appropriate people in your area.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we want you to be acutely aware of is that while, you know, we're speaking to the City of St. John's and our practices, and obviously our practices are, you know, reflect the numbers and so on, but we also want to reiterate the ease of vote by mail and the benefits of vote by mail, and the fact that while ours is an expensive election to run, yours would not be. I think you could follow the same vote by mail process and it costing you a lot less. So I know that you always have to get your council buy-in and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, and there certainly are other ways that certainly small communities would be able to drop around and distribute the vote by mail kits.
And reduce their costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next
Thank you.
question now. We're down to just a few minutes left, so I'm going to try and
We
get
could
through
talk
the
all day
remaining.
about this stuff, Kathy.
I'm sure you could, and some of these are
Get us
going
started.
straight into our frequently asked questions section, soon to come on the M&L elections page. All right, question from Nigel Black regarding Datafix. Nigel, do you want to unmute?
Yep, if you can hear me. I just wondering about your counting and scanning process and whether that's, you know, whether it's a start to finish process with Datafix or whether you have different software and different suppliers.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. Sorry.
All right. I'll try again.
Shout.
I just wondering about the counting and scanning process and whether that's a start to finish process from Datafix or whether you have different suppliers and contractors and software for that end of the process.
Yeah, we have multiple contracts. We contract with DataFix for the hosting of the list and for the printing of the ballots. We also have a contract with Dominion Voting Systems, or historically we have, like Karen said, we've gone out to tender now. And they look after the scanning, but they work with DataFix on the ballots to ensure the ballots will work with their scanners. So they work collaboratively, but we contract separately with both companies.
Thank you.
Okay, Mona, do you want to unmute and ask your question regarding the start time for ballot counting?
Oh, sure. It was just a quick question. I didn't quite catch what you said, Karen. Did you say you started counting at 8 a.m. on election day as
we
opposed to
have done
waiting
that.
till 8 p.m.?
We have done that in the previous by-election, yes. Started counting manually.
All of our elections, we start counting at 8 a.m., whether it's ballot manual or
When we're doing a
Scan.
tabulation count, though, we do, stack up the ballot sheets and give them to the Dominion voting people who are in the room, and they start scanning them. We have no idea until 8 p.m. who the winners are or how the count is going.
But when you
We
did
have
your,
some idea, but we don't know because we don't have
Yeah,
access
but-
to their.
say in your by-election, in the by-election, because I believe you counted manually in the by-election, you actually started at 8 a.m.?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we started as soon as we were able to, once we got the boxes opened and the envelopes opened and the ballots unfolded. And of course, while we're doing all of this, we are watched by a number of scrutineers. So there are scrutineers in the room watching everything we're doing.
I think it's important, Mona, too, like we start early in anticipation of any backlogs or anything that's coming in from the satellite drop-off centers. But there was big lulls in that day, So particularly since I indicated earlier, we sent out just shy of 14,000 kits, but remember, we only received 40% of that. So whatever that percentage is. So yeah, I mean, there was big lulls, but it's better to allow more time than not enough.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I would, starting at 8 a.m. is a big difference in us waiting. Like typically we wouldn't open anything until 8 p.m. Advance.
Oh, wow.
Anything.
Yeah, but you see, you've not used a vote by mail. So
No,
that's the difference
that's
in
right.
the election process too, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a big difference and a big help.
Yeah, it is a big help. Yeah, for sure, because your results are ready a lot quicker.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Thank you.
Okay, Portugal Cove St. Philip's. I'm not sure who posed the question, but I will ask it for you, and perhaps you can do a follow-up. What other mitigation do you take for fraud besides the disclaimer on the instructions? For instance, can one person cast, say, the 5 ballots mailed to their dwelling?
They can.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it is against the law to do that. And we have our processes have a lot of components to it that kind of can't say we can readily identify fraud, but we do have processes in place when a kit is completed and it is registered. So the vote by mail, the voter declaration form is separated from the ballot, scanned, and you're noted as having voted. And then that individual, Karen J, calls in and says, I need a kit, I haven't voted. We can go in and say, we can't produce a new kit because you're reflected as having voted.
And we sent your vote by mail kit to 2 Smith Avenue. So we'll go back to 2 Smith Avenue and say, there's a vote by mail kit that was sent here. We have a claim that there was fraudulent activity. It's a very trackable process. And for the most part, people are honest, and I know that may seem like some people may be cynical about that, but what is the benefit of voting fraudulently when you could get caught? And arguably, you can go to 5 different polling stations and say, I don't have any ID, I want to vote, and fraud exists everywhere in whatever form of election you choose.
And again, I think we need to reiterate that this is not something we've had a lot of exposure to despite the, you know, the large number of electorate and processes we have in place.
Yeah.
I mean, can we even cite examples? Like, I can cite one, I used to coordinate the elections prior to Karen doing so, or way back in the day. And, you know, I had won the first election that I coordinated was 2005, and there was one person who attempted to vote and was not able, and I went to their home, and the husband had voted for the wife. And you know, I don't recall, there's been incidents since then, albeit minimal, where someone goes to vote and they're reflected as having voted, and then we deal with that, as Karen indicated.
We had one instance where someone back in the 2017 election wanted to register to vote, and it was discovered they had already voted, and they said, I did not vote. So we got them to fill out an oath or affirmation of fraud, and we issued them a new vote by mail kit to vote. And you know, we set that one aside, and it's a judgment call sometimes. If a vote is really, I guess, close, then it becomes an issue in a recount situation. But it didn't become an issue, so we didn't pursue it. And it's something we could have pursued with the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, I guess, if you wanted to, but we didn't bother. It's a judgment call, I guess, for each municipality. And again, voter fraud exists in the old-fashioned way, going to a polling station, saying, okay, I'm Elaine Henley, I'd like to vote, I don't have any ID, okay, no problem, we'll sign you up, and you get a vote by mail kit and you can vote. And claim to be someone you are not. That's voter fraud. It exists in every format. The only thing with vote by mail is I think it's a bit more trackable.
The other thing is that when you register to be on the voters list, you have to provide ID. So, I mean, I know that once the kits go out, if there are kits going to homes where people have moved and so on, then the opportunity for fraud exists. But it's not been something that we've had an issue with. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And actually, I think you've just anticipated the last question that we had in the chat, which was how do you track who is voting in person and who is voting by mail to ensure no double voting. So there we go. That pretty much wraps it. Oh, I've got one last one. Okay, this is going to have to be really quick because we're right up on time. Terry Lynn asks to confirm, if someone votes in person, you don't require ID?
No, you don't. If you don't have any ID, you have to sign an affidavit claiming that you have no ID. There are a lot of people out there who may not have a driver's license or any kind of ID, and they still, as citizens, have the right to vote. If they are willing to claim, I am a Canadian citizen over the age of 18, resident of St. John's, and I want to vote, but I don't have any proof that I am who I say I am. In the Municipal Elections Act, I think it allows for that. And we don't question it. We give them a ballot as long as they sign an affidavit, which has to be signed by a commissioner of oaths. Excellent.
Well, I think with that, we're going to draw a line under the Q&A session. Thank you so much. That was a really good discussion, I think. We covered an awful lot of ground in very little time. And of course, if folks have more questions, I encourage you to contact M&L. I'll be giving you my email address a little bit later on. And again, we'll be loading a bunch of frequently asked questions onto our site. So we'll keep track of any thoughts that may occur to you after we get off this one. Just showing you the vote by mail video link, bit.ly link one more time. But basically, thank you to Elaine and Karen for their insight into the vote by mail. Again, 20 years of experience right there in using this mechanism. As I noted a little bit earlier, there are going to be a number of these sorts of web offerings now in the next few weeks. I don't know if everybody on the call today is perhaps already registered for our symposium. We get underway on Thursday, May the 6th. We happen to have an entire session in plenary that day that's going to be devoted to the municipal election readiness topic area. So we've got a number of sessions therein, but there will definitely be one there on running safe municipal elections involving municipal and provincial affairs staff. We have another webinar in the queue, ideally by somewhere in the middle of the month of May, which is when Elections NL tells us they'll be in a position to begin responding to requests from municipalities who may be seeking base election lists. You too can enter into a data sharing agreement with them for that information, and we'll be providing all the gory details in a webinar that'll be about a week and a bit after symposium. And finally, we have a big push, as I noted earlier, on making elections accessible this year. So we'll be organizing a webinar presumably by somewhere late May, very beginning of June, with a number of the and key members of that team that we've assembled to help us out with that topic area. Just to give you a high view of the framework, perhaps you've already visited our website and have had a chance to look at it, but obviously, again, we are encouraging everybody to very seriously consider undertaking vote by mail. I think we've had a fairly good discussion today, but you know, there are bare bones ways certainly to make vote by mail work for you. You don't need to deal with Canada Post. You can distribute them otherwise. You can receive them otherwise. So there are a lot of places where you can reduce your costs. And I think Elaine and Karen, you know, did a good job of highlighting where some of those opportunities exist. We have a timeline, you know, coordinated countdown is a thing, and we'll be spending a fair bit of time in the next little while, you know, sort of warning you as we come up on deadlines. There will be a variety of resources and supports that will be appearing on the MNL website in the municipal elections section. There is, in that presentation I mentioned earlier that we're giving at the Municipal Symposium, there is going to be some discussion of the group purchasing opportunities as you count down to elections that may help you out. We are going to be actually looking into some of the kit production details because we recognize that there may be some potential bottlenecks. There's not a very long period of time between when your close of nominations happens and when you have to actually have your kits ready to roll. So we'll be looking at those things as well. And finally, we're seeing this as really an opportunity to press all the buttons on the Municipal Elections Act as it exists currently. As most of you listening are aware, there has been a commitment to look at all of the municipal sector legislation and review it. The work is ongoing on the Municipalities Act itself. Obviously, the Municipal Elections Act won't get done in time for this fall, but we can certainly do a lot in terms of informing ourselves based on the experience we have in the next 5 months about what it is we probably want to see changed if we're going to have that chance to review the Act. So just so that you're aware, we've been talking to a whole bunch of people. We've spoken to a number of the folks who are actually on this call already in preparing to work towards providing the toolkit to assist you in your countdown. We are very much conscious of the lens that we need to employ when we're looking at the circumstances of the big towns in this province versus the circumstances of our smaller ones. And back to the accessibility piece, we have a number of community partners that are working alongside of us right now in order to, provide a mechanism whereby you can actually speak to somebody if you're trying to troubleshoot some of the accessibility concerns that you may have for your election. If you haven't already, please take some time to visit our website. Like I said, this is going to be a bit of a living space for us over the course of the next little while. We do have a toolkit up there. We've already got a template letter if you're ready to make the decision and want to ask the minister for permission to allow the residents of your community to vote by mail. All the steps are going to be laid out there. You can check there. We will continue to update the website as I said over the next number of weeks as new pieces come forward. Once again, this is going to be the place that if there are questions that come forward from the membership at this stage in the game, after these webinars, we will be feeding them into our frequently asked questions section. But for the tremendous amount of basic information that we've covered today, the website will also be the place that you can go to get the links to be able to view this video tape again and perhaps share it. If there are members of council that perhaps you need to bring up to speed, if there are members of staff that you'd like to have a little more background on this, the tape from this session will be available to you. And I guess with that, I'll highlight my email address. I'm Kathleen Parwick. I'm the Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador Community Collaboration and Development Officer, but I'm carrying the COVID safe elections and accessibility files for the duration of the election period. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you all. And thank you so much for your time today. Thanks once again to Elaine and Karen. We couldn't have done it without you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.